Sports performance training, conditioning, and speed and agility training can make a huge difference in an athlete's life. Today, I'm talking with one of the best in the business, our performance director at Elite Athletes TV, Ethan Banning. It's coming up right now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Elite Athletes TV. I'm Mike Pulaski, former 11-year pro quarterback and quarterbacks coach here at EliteAthletesTV.com. A huge part for athletes getting ready for games, getting ready for seasons, and improving their sports performance is how you train in the weight room for speed and agility, for strength and conditioning. Our performance director here at EliteAthletesTV.com, Ethan Banning, is one of the best in the business, and I love the way he goes about it with athletes. We're going to talk to him today about old school training versus new school training, how multiple sports can help an athlete, and how you should put together your training program in the off season. Before we get started, make sure, if you haven't done it yet, if you're new to the channel, if you want to train for sports, be it baseball, basketball, football, soccer, whatever your sport is, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. Get notified every time we have new stuff coming out. Give us a thumbs up, hit that like button down below, and leave me a comment down below. Love to hear from you. Any videos that you want to see on the channel, we'd be happy to produce them for you. Now, I won't hold you up any further. Let's get into the details with Coach Ethan Banning, our performance director at Elite Athletes TV. So Ethan and I are talking the other day, and we're talking about what training used to be like back when we were playing and how much difference there is today from then. We saw, Ethan sent me this great tweet by Tom Brady talking about how he was rated during the draft and how he didn't let other people define him. But we're talking kind of part of the reason why Brady is so great this day is his training habits have changed, haven't they, brother?
Yeah, tremendously. And it's interesting. I think nutrition is now more of a year-round consideration, and the training models have been adapted. There was a lot of trial and error going on, and there was good stuff happening, bad stuff happening, and I think what we see with Tom Brady is he's resourced with the ability to find experts from lots of different places. And, really what we're trying to do is provide that same, kind of expertise at a, lower budget number than maybe he, I've heard numbers like $1 million annually that he's investing in his person to be that guy. And clearly it's paying off, and he has a different body, and then, his fundamentals are better, and his performance is amazing, even, at his age. So it's paying off, and it's certainly, the proof's in the pudding. The more you put in, the more you get out. And it has changed quite a bit. And he was in, he went to Michigan, and certainly not bashing them. They had lots of success. But when you look at bodies coming out, he was kind of a bad body quarterback. And historically, that came out of a program where they did a circuit style of HIIT training, where they did, they had a line of pieces of machines, and they would do one set to failure on each machine. And it certainly wasn't what we might consider specific in nature. Particularly some of the throwing athletes and so forth over the years have demanded more specificity. And really, from my perspective, why that was the case is because the training when we were kids, maybe people really put themselves in one corner and said, I'm an Olympic guy, or I'm a HIIT guy, or I'm this. Meaning, like, if I'm an Olympic guy, we're going to clean, snatch, front squat, and that's kind of going to be where we make our money. Or HIIT guy is going to be a machine-based program, or powerlifting is going to be the squat, the deadlift, the bench press are main focuses. And if you look at throwing athletes or athletes that play, other sports, they're going, that doesn't really feel specific. And my dilemma with that is I just think it's bad strength and conditioning. I think we need to be more diverse than that. We've got to be multiplanar, multilateral. We got to make sure that we're doing things to develop a symmetrical and even arguably, I use the term bulletproof athlete. They're not literally bulletproof, but we want to reduce or mitigate the amount of risk of injury by training the joints and ranges of motion that are going to be covered in the entirety of their sport. That makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, I remember we were part of that Olympic crew when I was playing at Cal, and back then that was cutting edge stuff. You know, I was a big bench guy, right? 315 bench, 338 hang clean at the time. You know, we were back squatters. I would have been a 600-pound back squatter, except I had a cartilage injury from playing basketball, you know. And so we were just about to test, and all of a sudden I play basketball, blow my knee, and it's the last time I get to squat heavy. So back then though, that was considered kind of the standard because all the big guys, all the football athletes, that's what they did. But I remember like part of it was prescribed. You might do a set of obliques and you do 3 sets of, abs, really just crunches, and that was it.
Well, and it's just not, total body integration. I mean, we don't get to play a sport with just our upper body or just our lower body or just the front of our body or just the back of our body. We play the sport with the entire body. And so training and how it's evolved over the years is, at least a well-written, well-designed training program is one that, thinks in general terms initially to make sure that we're laying foundational pieces to be able to be to jump efficiently, to understand how to change directions properly, to understand sprint mechanics, and then build into the structures that support those capabilities, right? So like I see, or I hear parents a lot asking for sport specificity, yet their child is not capable of lunging with their body weight for 20 yards. And I'm
Right.
going, whoa, we've gotten the cart way out in front of the horse here. Let's make sure. I mean, and when we think of it in terms of like building a house or even a skyscraper, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes in before you see anything happen. It's below ground. We're digging holes and putting down rebar and pouring a foundation that's got a cure so that it can support the tall walls. Now, the taller the building we're building, the deeper the foundation. So that more of that general physical preparedness, the better athlete somebody wants to be. And, I think in North America, what we've seen is we spend far too much time getting into specialization at an early age. And then we see, as a result, a couple things happen. We have statistically, the rates are soaring for dropout or burnout and injuries. Those two rates are super high. And, what we know, or what we believe we know, is that that's because we specialize kids so early and they get burned out, or they're too much repetitive movements. So a throwing athlete, throw, 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 throw. Well, only got so many throws in the arm, or just like, I know this, I suspect, or at least I would be willing to bet you played multiple sports in high school.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah. So I not just in high school. I played. I mean, all throughout my career until I got to college and specialized in just football. But there was, basketball, baseball, soccer, football. I ran track. I high jumped. I played volleyball. In the junior high, and volleyball in the quad and the beach. I played everything because I always wanted to compete. But and we've talked about this before. It's so integral. I think how important is that to not just get the body well rounded, but also teach that competitive spirit you need for athletes too, and learning how to deal with different sports.
Well, I think you can be more purpose driven and intentional in the sport that you're in at that time because you get an emotional break, is one reason. I think that a guy that's an overhead thrower like you gets an opportunity for your arm to rest. So you build the arm, then you rest the arm, build the arm, and there's ebb and flow to that. I mean, there was a study, maybe not a study, but there was a survey done by ESPN with NFL quarterbacks, both current and retired, a few years ago. And we'll make sure I've got this data,
Yeah, we'll
but it
find the
was
link and we'll
roughly,
put that link down below.
yeah, there was 127, I think, quarterbacks, either retired or current players, that were asked to survey. How many of them played more than one sport in high school? And the number was 122. Five guys, it was either five or six guys. I think six guys played one sport only. The interesting thing about that, even more so as I dug deeper into the survey, 5 of those 6 guys were never more than a backup quarterback at the NFL level. And I know that's it's impressive to be a backup in the NFL, but 5 out of 6 is a pretty staggering statistic for, when you're talking about 121 of 127 played multiple sports and they were starters in the NFL. And it just further, kind of drives the point home that multiple sport athletes really do a great job of developing the whole person. And the same things talked about, at the Super Bowl typically and the World Series about how many of the people that are playing in the games played multiple sports. Well, what we're really talking about is that, well-rounded development. And so now in this world of, where people are playing one sport, in my opinion, far too early, I try to make sure that our program develops a more diverse, symmetrical athlete, and we take some of that specialization away from them so that they develop some of the skills they would have learned playing other sports. Like I was working with a high school baseball program a few years ago, and I did a little survey with our freshmen and just said, hey guys, how early did you start playing baseball, and how early did you play baseball only? And I had 15 kids, and I had 5 kids that played baseball only from the time they were 4 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And we had, and then there were kids that were playing baseball only. I mean, every one of the kids that I was interviewing was playing baseball only at that point as freshmen in high school. But I mean, at least half of them were playing baseball only by the time they were 10. And certainly in Arizona, because we have so much sunshine that you can throw, 35,000 throws a year as a 10-year-old.
Oh yeah.
And so then we look at and go, and it's not just shoulder health that we're talking about. Then we got to look at like hip rotary and hip extension, because throwing a baseball and hitting a baseball require very similar hip extension movements. So if I'm a righty as an example, and I do 35,000 swings a year and 35,000 throws a year, my right hip just did 70,000 hip extensions, which is what's required to do a sprint. But my left hip did 0 hip extensions. Yeah. And I know that you've heard the cliche, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Right?
Right.
So that being said, my left hip is the one that doesn't do hip extension well. So if I'm righty, now I don't field my position as well moving to my right, which is I've got to cross my body with my glove. And then I don't run as fast. I don't steal bases as well because I don't push off with that leg as well. And there's all kinds of patterns that are driven home by skill-driven sports like baseball. Like a baseball player never learned how to jump efficiently. Well, running is a series of jump and land, jump and land, jump and land. So I hear baseball coaches all the time, well, these kids don't know how to run at all. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding, because you guys, all you do is throw, catch, and hit.
Right.
You're surprised that they don't run very well?
It would be crazy to think about that. I can't even imagine. I can't fathom being a single sport athlete at 10 years old, how that would have changed my life.
I had 3 kids now, that at 2 years old.
That's crazy. I get parents now as I'm coaching quarterbacks, and they're like waiting for me to drop the boom. Like, when are you going to tell me he needs to be a football only guy? When are you going to tell me? And I tell them, I am never going to tell you he needs to be a football only guy. If he can go into high school playing 2 or 3 sports, great. If he can go into college playing 2 or 3 sports, even better. I mean, as long as he can play 3 sports and handle it, fantastic for the body, fantastic for the mind, right? That, like you said, you still get to compete at a high level, but you get a break from your primary sport, whatever that is. Even when we were playing together, and Ethan and I go way back to the Arena League, I was golfing. You know this, you and I were golfing together when I wasn't playing football. So I was still playing another sport. Now, obviously not as much contact in that one, safer, and the coaches approved of it, but still trying to compete somewhere else and play another sport, but to kind of get that respite from football.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got a number of friends that coach college baseball. One of my very dear friends coaches college baseball. And he told me in no uncertain terms, he's like, look, if I'm recruiting two players and they're the same player on the baseball field, one of them plays a second sport and one of them plays baseball only, 100% of the time, I'm taking the kid that plays multiple sports.
I can't tell you
It's
how many
not even
college coaches,
close.
Pac-12 coaches, I've had that same exact discussion with Justin Wilcox over at Cal. They encourage all of their guys to play a second sport. They want them to play a second sport. I think the specialization issue, like so many things, there's so much detail out there and so many people kind of pushing you to do one thing. Not to put a bad motive on anybody, but understand this: if you're an athlete, be an athlete, play sports, do your thing.